Hi friends. Today we're going to do the mix portion on this demo that we've been working on for the last couple of videos. If you saw my other video on my philosophy around demos and mixes, essentially this is not record ready. This is a presentable track to give to my bandmate to allow him to work and collaborate from, but it's not record ready. I do a lot of my mixing on demos from presets. So mostly I'm going to get pretty close to a good sound, and then that's going to be it. Not going to spend a lot of time EQing, not going to spend a lot of time applying different effects, stuff like that. We're going to go for an overall vibe, an evenness of sound throughout, nothing too harsh. It's going to sound good when we're done, but it's not going to be polished. It's going to be good enough to allow him to listen, understand the vibe and energy that I'm going for, and then do his portion. We're going to work with a handful of plugins today. I'll talk about them as I go through them. So let's jump in. So first things here, I have, I did not rename these. So I have a lead guitar that's panned a little to the left. I have a lead guitar that's panned a little to the right. And then I have two rhythm guitars that are hard panned. And then a bass that's center panned and some MIDI drums. So let's rename this to drums. So the first thing that we want to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to edit the tracks, meaning that I'm going to cut out the dead sections and I'm going to crossfade the sections if they butt up against each other and aren't like a fade out. So let's go through and take a look at that. So we'll start up here with this lead guitar. So when I'm doing this, because I'm just trying to get close enough, I'm going to come in here to the editor section. I'm going to select both tracks so that wherever I clip it on this top one, it's going to apply it to the bottom one. Zoom out just a hair on that. I'm going to select my fade tool. And on these ones, since these are the lead in here, so they come in for half a bar before the rest of the song comes in, 3/4 of a bar maybe. I'm going to cut these here. Get rid of that. And we'll select these two tracks and we're going to fade so that the fade is at full volume technically on that bar. So that it will sound like this. This is such a minuscule amount of time that you don't even notice the ramp up from nothing. But it's a much cleaner intro than just having it into the new track. So then let's come over here and I will probably let these just fade out, but let's give them a listen individually. So what I'm going to do is at the 26th bar here, I'm just going to fade this out. I like having that residual kind of sound, and I kind of like a little bit of string noise. I think it gives it character. I could start that fade a little sooner. Yeah, we'll do it just before bar 26. So I'm going to come down and match it on this one. Did I? Whoop. There you go. So in the full mix, you really don't even hear that pick scrape. So let's check this other bit. So because I'm only going to give you up through the first chorus, up through bar 97 here, you're not going to hear any of the lead guitar stuff in the rest of the track. Some of it hasn't been written yet, like the guitar solo. I don't do that until I'm going to actually track it. But so it looks like when I applied that fade, I had the whole track highlighted, so it applied the fade here already. So let's check that. Let me solo it. Yeah, that's a fine spot. So we'll just match that under here. Right around there. Maybe a little less. Like that. So let's check this intro here. Or at least the intro into this section. So it's pretty clean. I didn't have a whole lot of noise leading into this, so I'm just going to drag it a little before half of this beat. cut it there for both. Delete that. And then right at where the track actually, or my playing starts, that's where I'm going to have it fade up. So I had both selected, so it applied it to both. So it sounds like this. So it'll go from nothing to a nice clean start. So let's come over here to the rhythm guitars. Let's check this top one. And we'll cut it one beat, or a 32nd, a 16th. 16th note before it technically starts. I technically started a hair late, but you're not going to notice. So we'll cut that, delete it, and we'll cut this in the same spot. If this was the actual like production track, I probably would be a little more particular with where I was editing it, but it's a demo. So let's check this top one. So we'll back it up to match because that's a fine spot. And we'll cut it on both just to be symmetrical. Cut that. Come over here to the 25th bar. And then we'll just fade those out so it'll sound like this. Very good. So let's come over here to where this rhythm guitar starts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these out just a hair. Come on, give me the pointer. So I can see where it started. And on both of these, we're going to go right there. Give those a little clip. And then we're going to start the end the fade right where that track should start at bar 26. So that'll sound like this. Pretty clean. So these guitars here, because they're solid all the way through, I'm just going to crossfade them. Boop. So that applied a crossfade all over. So let's check this all the way down. Boom. So that applied some fades throughout. I'm not going to play anything past this. I'm just going to come through and do the fades. In fact, I'm going to skip all the rest of this in the video so that you don't hear it, but I can listen to it. And then I'll jump into where I start doing the fades up through the chorus on the bass. Back on the bass. So what happens if you don't crossfade these tracks? I'll show you here in just a second. Fade that. So what happens if you don't crossfade them? You get a little pop when that audio stops and starts again real quick, and there's that dramatic change in volume. So you might be able to hear it very faintly here on this bass track. It's very, very faint. Maybe it'll do it a little more pronouncedly here. It's very, very quiet. But what you want to do, come through here, and we're just going to do like Just the littlest little fade, almost imperceptible to the human ear. Little fade. Come through here. Little fade, so we have one there. We want fades all over here. Almost through the end. And I'm not going to do that on the drums because it's software and I don't need to do that. So now everything's edited. We have this nice clean intro. No noise or anything. It just comes in nice. One more time. Sick. So now that everything's edited, let me give it a once over one more time. Make sure I didn't screw myself up somewhere. So like right here, it looks like I have a fade, but not a crossfade. It's not what I want. So those are all crossfaded, crossfaded. Yep, okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of set our levels. So I generally like for things to hit somewhere around -12, just as like a jumping off point. I'll adjust it up or down as we go. But usually around -12 is kind of where I like to start. So let's pull up the console section. And because we don't have that many tracks, this will be actually really easy to track. You'll notice over here on the drums, I have these cranked because when I'm writing and playing back, I don't like to have to fiddle with the volume a lot. So I'm going to put these down to 0. And typically I'll make any volume adjustments to the drums within the contact plugin that the Get Good drums are playing from. But let's give this a shot. One thing I wanted to mention is you'll notice that the volumes are pretty much at 0. Like the lead guitar is at 0.5 above, lead guitar on the right's at 1 up, but everything else is at 0. So you'll hear that even when I bring everything down to about -12, the drums are still really quiet. Somehow the drums got brought down. So let's put those back at 0. That bass is nice and punchy and loud, but we're going to change that eventually. So this is the part that trips people up in the way that I explain that I do this. So I kind of have a mastering chain that I like. And I put all my mastering stuff on this track because it's a demo. So I kind of have a mastering chain that I like. And then I tend to mix the tracks individually to fit into that mastering chain, if that kind of makes sense. So I'll set the mastering chain the way that I like it. And then I'll tweak the tracks to fit rather than making the tracks individually sound how I like and then applying mastering to that. So we'll go through that chain one by one and add those plugins, and I'll explain what they do, why I'm doing it, etc. So the first thing I want to do, I already have a limiter on just to avoid any pops, whatever, while I'm recording, playing back, adding the drums, whatever. And that's currently set to -1 out with no added gain. And that's fine. That's typically where I'm going to leave it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here. I want to check that drum volume one more time. Yeah, that feels fine for where we're at. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add in, under my dynamics, we're going to add in a multipressor. This is just the standard Logic Pro multipressor. A lot of the plugins that I use are just the stock Logic ones because I don't really have like expensive plugin money, but I do have free stock plugin money. And I really kind of leave it on these default settings. I like how they sound. So let's hear how this sounds with it. Now I'll turn it off. So you can see it's not doing a ton. It's very slight. So for the moment, I'm going to leave this, and we can also see that we aren't peaking anywhere or clipping on the outs of this plugin. So we're good right now. The next thing after the multipressor is I'm going to add specialize. I'm going to add an exciter. So an exciter emphasizes certain harmonics in a specific range. So I usually like it around here, color 2, around 6300. This has just been almost 10 years of playing around with the plugins and finding my sound. This tends to be what I like. I don't know how to explain it more than that, but let's try it with it off. Then with it on. You can hear it just adds a little brightness, a little energy to it. It also gives a little sizzle to the guitars that I like. So I might tweak this frequency range or the amount of harmonics a little bit, but typically about here is where I like it, and I'll just kind of adjust it in the EQ. Then, so let's leave that back on. After the exciter, I like to come in and do my stereo imaging. So this is one that I think I pulled off Reddit however many years ago. And these were some settings that were in this Reddit post, and I tried them and I liked them, and I really haven't thought a lot about it since. So here's the lower interval. As in how much of the lower frequencies do I want? How much do I want the lower frequencies to be spread? So we're going to come down here to 4%. And we're going to bump this lower frequency up to 3600. Too far. Okay. Upper interval, we're going to lower to about 76%. So that is how wide of a spread on that upper frequency range. And we're going to bring this down to 16.3. Again, this was recommended to me. I've played with it a little bit. It sounds good. I haven't really given it a lot of extra thought since then. So let's listen to that with it off. And then after a bar or two, I'll turn it on. might be less noticeable on the screen capture, but coming out of my monitors, it's a big difference. But so let's leave that on. So now we're going to get into kind of the, not special sauce, but like more of the fun plugins. So I like to throw on, it's a Waves plugin. It's called the Chris Lord Algae. I've never learned how to say this man's last name. CLA Mixdown Stereo. Save the project. So what this thing does is it's kind of like you can emphasize the bass, the treble, you can add some drive, and you can add some glue. And this glue is just more compression, I think, but it's very nice in that it just kind of makes everything sit a little nicer together. Like when you take a good s'more and just, it kind of does that. It's also another area where we can watch for our gain staging. So let's do it with it off, and then I'll turn it on. So it's based on this active settings, it's doing a little bit, but not very much. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring up this glue quite a bit because I like the glue. And then I'm going to bring up the bass just a hair, maybe to about 2. The treble to about 2, and I'm not going to touch the drive. So let's see how that sounds. So you can hear it just kind of pushes it a little bit, just compresses. And I like that because we're going to do some more fun stuff in a second. But yeah, a little emphasis on the bass, a little emphasis on the treble, a lot of glue, no drive. Something close to there. Then we're going to add in another Waves plugin that I am a big fan of. And this one is called the Infected Mushroom Pusher. And Infected Mushroom are like an EDM hip hop creator duo, if I recall. This plugin does a lot of things. I think it's some drive. It kind of does the same thing. I can emphasize the low, the high, the stereo imaging, some drive. But really on this one, pretty much all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this magic knob. I don't entirely know what this magic knob does, but I know that I like it. I like how it sounds. And that's enough for me. So let's try this with it off. Turn it on. Somewhere around 8 o'clock. Sounds pretty good. So let's do the comparison. Here's it off. Turn it on. Just adds a nice little extra to it. Again, I don't entirely know what it's doing, and that is okay with me. But somewhere around 8 o'clock or so, which I think is 21, plus 21. So like I said, you can add push, you can add imaging. I don't do anything in here except that magic knob. I like how it sounds. Then the last bit, brain fart. So let's save it again. And this last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a Tune Track plugin called Easy Mix 2. I think there's a new Easy Mix coming out, but I've been rocking Easy Mix 4 or Easy Mix 2 for 4 or 5 years. And I'm happy with it. I don't do a ton in here. I do the bass amp and cab modeler, and then I use the and then some of the master plugins, but sounds good. So let's go to master here. And this one has a bunch. I have some of their little expansion packs, but has a vintage master, a soft pop, a parallel, a multiband, metal master. The metal master one tends to just like drive the shit out of whatever is playing. I'll show you. But usually I'm actually kind of into the vintage, the soft pop, or the multiband. It kind of just depends on the song. So last time I think I picked the vintage. And this time I might pick something different, but we'll just have to play with it and see what sounds good for this song, because it's a little different on each one. But I don't have one picked, so let's try the vintage. So it says down here it's adding some high and low filter and some tape drive. And that one sounds okay, but let's try the soft pop one. So you can hear this one is clipping. I haven't done anything to it, just on its regular settings, it's clipping. It has this loudness thing that it doesn't sound great. But if I bring it down, the volume of this down, it should sound better. Even when I bring it down, it's clipping. I don't like this one. Let's try the multiband. This one also has the loudness that I don't love. But you can hear how much it's doing. Like, let me turn it back on. So with the loudness around 8:30, just before 9, it sounds okay. Let me show you the Metal Master one. Start with it off. It just is very radio rock sounding to me. I don't love it. There's a DI one, a Master 1, Master 2, Master Limiter, Maxi. Let's try the parallel one. We haven't done the parallel one. Almost no change. So let's go back to the vintage. So it's adding some mids in there, it sounds like. So I'll have to go back when I'm EQing and scoop a little bit of that out. But I think this sounds pretty good. That's pretty good. So let's start correcting some of the instruments. So the first one I'm going to start with is the drums. So if I open Contact, if I come over here to my full kit, let's save, because sometimes this crashes. Okay, so I'm using the Invasion kit. So if I go to full kit, Invasion. And so I have a master volume here, and I can add overall reverb to the kit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it from default kit raw to default kit high CPU. And so what the high CPU does is it adds what Get Good Drums calls turbo mode, which is basically processing that's happening within the Contact app that I don't have to apply to the actual track itself. So some compression, some reverb. I'm going to bring the master volume out up just a little bit. We're going to add a little reverb. So this is going to tax the CPU a little more, but let's check how that sounds. So let's come in here to the kick. The kick volume sounds good. So I'm not going to mess with the kick. Let's go to the snare. The snare sounds pretty good. I want just a little more. And I'm going to turn on some reverb. Sounds good to me. Toms get tricky, so let's come back to that. Bring up the ride cymbal a hair. So let's come in here to settings and we'll do the cymbal mixer. So in the overheads, you can control how much of each cymbal you get. We're gonna bring up the crashes. I usually bring down the hats a little bit too. They tend to be loud. Bring up the ride a little bit too. And then I don't usually adjust the room microphones. So let's play with this. I'm going to go ahead and duck the bass here a little bit, just because it's very punchy in that mix. So that was a good amount of toms. Let's listen to those toms. I liked the level of those toms, but I am going to add reverb. And I might even bring the kick down just a hair. Try that for now. So the next thing is let's jump on this bass. And we'll start at the beginning again. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to add an EQ. Just the stock channel EQ. Shut up. And the one in here that I like is under guitar. And where is it? E-bass EQ, I think, is the one I normally use. Yeah, that looks right. And then we're going to come in here under dynamics, compressor. Why do you keep coming up? So bass, and then I'm going to bring the threshold on the bass down to about 25, the ratio up to 3. That feels good. It tames it just a little bit. And then I have the dark glass plugin that's doing the tone. Very nice. I have it on the default, and I bring the drive down just a hair. Other than that, I don't goof with it really. And then inside Easy Mix, there's this Californian 1x15 bass cab that I really like. Sounds good to me. Save that again. So let's come back over here to the rhythm guitars. And on the rhythm guitars, I'm going to copy over this EQ, but I'm going to use the stock picked electric guitar. And I already know that I like how this sounds because I use it a lot, but let's see how it sounds on this portion. So let's mute these leads. So you can see it's pretty aggressive. It makes the guitar sound like nice and mean. So here's with it off. So it pulls out a lot of that low end too. So I might want to put just a hair of that back. If we check out that curve again, whoop. So it's pretty aggressive. I mean, basically at about 80, it starts whoop, or 62. At a 24 slope, it ducks that out pretty good and brings in some highs. So I might want to play with adding just a little bit of that low end back because there's a decent scoop here at 200. I like how that sounds. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to apply it to this one. Give me just a little of that low end back, but one more time. And you're not really supposed to mix things soloed because you want to hear how it sounds in the mix, but let's give that a listen. So that sounds pretty good, but it does make it not quieter, but the perceived loudness is lesser because it has less of that low end information. So we can bring that up. So now let's look at these lead guitars. I'm going to apply this same EQ block over here. And then probably what's going to happen is I'm going to this depends. Sometimes I scoop out a little more of that high end. Sometimes I add it. It kind of just depends on the lead part. This is not an incredibly high in pitch lead part, so I might just leave it. check something. I think I do like that. I just added in a little more of the high. So let's paste that in there. So I'm hearing, now that I've got that plugin on, I'm hearing a little extra. It kind of sounds like it's clipping. I don't see it happening on the meters, but I'm going to run through these plugins and see where that's happening. So right here, this red on the multipressor is where it's happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down the volume on this presser a little bit because I like these ratios, and when I tweak them, I didn't like that. So I hit the wrong undo. So let's go boop, boop. Come in here. I'm going to move this just a hair. Copy, come over here, paste. And one thing I could do actually is if I want to get specific, if I open this EQ block again, I could basically shelf off everything that I'm not using. Like I said, this part's a fairly high part, or not super high, but it's higher than the rhythm guitar. So let's come in as multi. So one more time. Another thing I want to do is I want to add some reverb to these. There's a couple ways that I could go about this. I could add reverb individually to the channels, or I can bus them to another bus track that has reverb on it already, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to come down here to the bus sends, and I'm going to send it to this large hall. The large hall is this track here that already has some EQ and a reverb within it. So, and I can control here the amount of volume that I want to send to this bus track, which bus tracks are a cool way to add effects to multiple tracks without affecting the actual instrument track here. Like I can apply the same reverb to both of these without having to apply it to the track individually, which saves on processing power. So let's see what that sounds like. So I'm going to start with it off, and then I'm going to turn it on. You can hear that reverb kick in. And you know know it's working because when I hit stop, you hear that reverb tail like this. Reverb. So I think I'm at, negative 15 sounds pretty good. And so on this bus, I can solo this bus and you can hear just the reverb, or at least that's being sent to it, which right now is these 2 lead guitars and the drums. But we're going to put that back at 0. I haven't done anything terribly exciting, but this already sounds pretty good. The thing that's sticking with me right now is that there's a big disparity in volume when these lead guitars stop. The track seems much quieter because there's half as many guitars, but I don't want that. I don't want it to be such a stark drop off. I think what I need to do is I need to duck these rhythm guitars so that they're not as present, and then I will automate them to be louder once the lead guitars drop out. So let's see how loud I want them to be. So that feels fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on automation after I save it. And automation, you can control basically any controllable parameter within plugins. I can control panning, volume, turning a plugin or a virtual pedal on or off, all kinds of stuff. But I'm just going to automate the volume right now. So this is where this track starts. Let's zoom this in. Zoom it in, way in. So this is where the track starts. And I, on these 2 tracks, want to put a node here. So that I'm at 2.9. I'm going to back one up here. Let's go there and there. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to put a node here. And then a node here. You probably don't need this many nodes, but I like it. So what happens here is that I'm going to bring this down. Oh, that's not going to ramp, is it? Yeah, see how this one started over here at 2.9? I need to bring it also down so that my volume isn't like ramping or fading. I want it to be consistent. Oh, that's way too far. That's what happens when you zoom way in. So right here we're at -6. That's fine. So I need to set the start here to also be -6, and that's going to ramp up to this node here at 2.9. I'm going to set that one to 6 as well. So this track is going to start at 6, and then it'll jump up to 2.9 here when this section cuts out, and it'll happen really, really quickly. So by the time these lead guitars fade out, this will be at -3, which is what I wanted. So let's give that a shot. Let me zoom out because I don't need to be that zoomed in. Now let's give that a listen. And if you watch the numbers here, when that automation kicks in, those are going to shoot up. So that seemed cool. I'm still wondering if the lead guitars are loud enough. I might bring them up since I ducked down the rhythm guitars under that point. So let me try that. These are not automated. I'm just going to turn their volume up. So there's something that's getting lost in there. It's like that made zero sense. There's like a run that I'm doing in there, which is whoop. Which is getting a little lost. I'm starting to wonder maybe if it's the panning, the way that I've got it panned, because they're both plus or minus 19 of center. Let me bring them in a little more. So let's go -5, +5. I'm going to live with that for now. We'll sit with it. I'm going to duck this volume back just a hair. Let's try that. That's going to be good for now. So let's listen to the rest of this and see if something sticks out. So nothing really stuck out for me on that. I do think that I want to try a little wider of a pan. Let's split the difference. Go to plus or minus 10. I'm kind of starting to think that minus 6 might not be enough. Let's try, oh, what? Up my automation. Yeah. Okay, so let's bring this one down to like minus 7. 6.9, close enough. Let's try that. That might be it. Let's, for the sake of fun, try 6.5. It does lack just like a little bit of oomph. I think that sounds pretty good. I do want to add an EQ here. Whoops. At the end before the limiter. And just take out a little bit of the mids right around here. Just a little bit. Just cleans it up just that much if you listen. There's just a little bit of buildup going on there that I can hear. That should be good. Let's make sure that our gain staging is good still. So I did see here on this input, it was flashing, which means it's getting too much. And I thought I might have heard a little something, which was what prompted me to check. So we should be good now. Plugins behave differently. Some of them are more sensitive than others, but I could add it there in that plugin, but I'm going to add it at the limiter. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce this real quick. I'm going to save it. And I'm going to bounce this to check it. We're going to bounce it as a WAV file. And let's, how far back does this go? Yeah, it's close. So Command B, end right, WAV, 48K. Boom. Call it version 1, bounce. So this will take a second, and then we'll check it on the, because the internal mix within Logic always seems to sound a little different compared to when I play the wave back just through the system. Normally the bass is a little loud, so we'll see if that holds true. I don't normally tweak a lot of things. Sometimes the drums are a little loud or the toms are not loud enough. And then the bass is usually too loud, but we'll check this one and see what it rings out as. So what I want to do to adjust this a hair, just a smidge, I'm going to bring the entire drum kit up just a little bit. Full kit. Other than that, I think it was pretty good. I might give it a touch more bass. Do like half a dB. Let's try that. Oh, the other thing I wanted to check was there was something happening. right there. Where's that happening? Okay, it didn't happen that time, so let's just bounce it again and see if same thing happens. I'm actually pretty stoked with how that came out. I think that's good enough for the purposes of this video. So let me come in here, save this. And that's where I'm going to stop. I'm pleased with how that turned out. That didn't take that long. I think I've been at this for about 90 minutes by the end of this point. So per track, to get a pretty good sounding demo just to collaborate with, that's not that much time. And it takes longer because I'm explaining it to you as I go. If I was just to do it, it would take way less time. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys like this kind of thing. I have fun doing them, so I'm going to keep doing it, but I like the production side of stuff. I like recording. I like writing. I have fun doing these, so I hope you have fun hanging out with me for a bit. But I appreciate you spending time with me, and we'll see you next time.